When a game has the essence of its predecessors but brings a good amount of new stuff to the table, then I really think it's a great entry into a series. I don't think the Resident Evil 4 remake hits that mark of good amount of new stuff, but it does add some stuff to the Resident Evil formula that I don't think I've seen before. Granted, I haven't played Resident Evil 8, the last one I played was 7, but there is stuff in there that feels like it wasn't there before. Some of it's good, some of it's mediocre, and some of it is bad in my opinion. But first, let's cover what is Resident Evil 4 Remake. Resident Evil 4 is one of the grandfathers of survival horror. You play as Leon Kennedy in search of Ashley Graham, who is the president of the United States' daughter, who has been kidnapped by a cult in the Spanish countryside. I could ask the question of how incompetent are the Secret Service in the Resident Evil universe for her to get kidnapped like that, but that's something to dive into later. I've currently put in 7 hours to the full game and about an hour to the demo, which I honestly think the demo wasn't really enough of a slice of the game to get a good feel for it. I'm playing on hardcore difficulty. I'm currently at the start of chapter 6 after having just completed the house survival with Luis at the end of chapter 5. I think that the most important thing the developer did with the Resident Evil 4 remake is changing the feel of the game. It feels a lot more like it's a survival horror game than an action survival game. From the lighting to the strength of the enemies, this game just screams horror and survival. Whereas the original felt more like it was going for action survival than horror survival, even though it had like some horror elements in there, at least from what I can remember. This one leans a lot more into that horror aspect. And that's one of the game's biggest strengths, its atmosphere. Everything feels like it's kind of claustrophobic and that there's always going to be something right around the corner that's going to jump out at you and attack you. Yes, it still has those action set pieces from the original, like fighting the chainsaw guy in the town or fighting to survive in the house with Luis. But it's the areas in between those that make this game come to life as a horror game. Before I go too far, can we talk about the models of the wolves or dogs really quick? Does anybody else hate the look of these things? I think they are some of the ugliest models I've seen in a while. Like, I hate the giant grin that it looks like they have for their mouth because their like lips are pulled up so it's only exposing teeth, and how they just look like a giant ball of fur. It looks really ugly to me. I'm curious like what you guys think of it also. Well, that's it for that tangent. Let's talk about the lighting and mood a little bit more. The lighting in the game sets the mood really well. I'm not sure how much they've changed like the level designs or added new areas for you to explore, but with just the major shift in the lighting, it all feels like you're in some place that you shouldn't be. It has that foreboding feeling to it, which I think a lot of horror games that incorporate combat miss, because they always lean more towards the combat side than the horror side. There are a few exceptions, but it feels like they don't get the balance of combat and horror very well. And now let's talk about some of the other best stuff about the game, and that is its combat. I love the feedback that you get from the enemies when shooting them in combat. They kept the excellent ragdolls from the original game and just kind of like, improve them. The AI is a good amount smarter and has more animations to them than the original. And it just makes the game a lot more dangerous, especially with the variety of weapons that the enemies wield. The guns have some really nice feedback too. I love how punchy the shotgun and rifle sound and feel. I think the pistol has the right amount of impact for the amount of ammo you get for it. And it all feels like really good. But there is one part of combat that I am disappointed in though, and that's the decision to go with a regular crosshair. I think one of the most iconic things from Resident Evil 4 is the use of a laser sight for the aiming reticle instead of a standard crosshair like in this remake. Okay, yes, sometimes it didn't make sense like on the initial shotgun and rifle, but that's kind of part of the rule of cool when it comes to games. Like, it may not make sense, but this is our main thing and we're going to keep doing it. And I would actually really like to have that instead of an attachment that you can buy for your pistols. And that's kind of like my thoughts and feelings on the game overall. but I do want to focus more on like the new additions that they've made to the game with this remake and just what my thoughts are there. Because there are some things that are good, there's some things that are meh, and there's one thing that I really hate. Normally, I won't say that I hate a mechanic. I will say it's annoying or it's very disruptive or something like that. But right now, I really hate this mechanic. And that mechanic is the knife being able to break in Resident Evil 4 Remake. I think it freaking sucks and I hate it. I get it as a mechanic that's meant to increase your tension within the game by taking away your ability to one-shot reviving enemies. But it just gets so annoying, like really quickly. Because it takes away not only that ability, but your ability to counter or parry attacks and the ability to quickly dispatch a foe that has grabbed you instead of button mashing to get out of the grapple. I think a better way to go about it would be a sharpness system where your knife wouldn't just straight up break, but become duller as you use it, and it would take more stabs to kill an enemy. It would keep all of your abilities with the knife intact, but it still would ratchet up that tension by not instantly killing an enemy, unless it is in that first line. And I think that is the worst mechanic that they added in this Resident Evil 4 remake. When it comes to some of the other new additions that have been added to the game, I don't think they're that impressive, or that they're like really needed that much in the game. I think the side quests are a neat idea and give some function to stuff people would just pass by in the game, like the medallions, but really that's it. And the spindle shop doesn't really feel like it's needed either. You could just have one currency for everything, or just trade the stuff from the way stations or that are scattered in the world, like idols and things that you can only sell, to the merchant in return for specific items. Then it encourages hunting to go back for those specific items to turn into the merchant and get that upgrade. Like get that piece of equipment or get that treasure map or something like that. Like these additions aren't bad, but I don't think they're very necessary to be added into the game. They're like right on the line of good and bad. They're basically meh. There are some things that I do like about the game that have been a new addition, and that's like the charms that give you a buff depending on which ones you have equipped, or each attaché case giving you a different buff, and being able to break boxes without using your knife is nice. But it's really a double-edged sword from my experience, because these assholes have kept Vipers in the game in boxes, and you don't kill them when you stomp the boxes. So you have to try and quickly get your pistol up or your knife out, or swing quick enough before they attack you, and I hate it. I've hated Vipers in these games ever since they were introduced and I started playing them, which I think was Resident Evil 4 when I started playing these games. So I've hated them since then. All in all, I like Resident Evil 4 Remake because it's a large graphical upgrade to the original, and it keeps the heart and soul of the original intact while still feeling kind of fresh. But with what's been added in terms of new mechanics up to Chapter 6, it isn't really impressing me all that much with anything new, because some of them are annoying, some of them are decent but don't really care for, and others are kind of good. And that's kind of why I think the Resident Evil 4 Remake is a really good entry in the Resident Evil series, but I don't think it's a great one. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, kick that like button like a box with yellow tape, and also subscribe. Here's a playlist of my other 10-hour impressions and my latest video, and I hope you have a royal day.